But what I found even more concerning was that as they thought about the future, as they thought about marriage, I could see that really one of the reasons they wanted to get married was so they could start to act out porn. And so this had been their childhood, this has been their teenage years, now they're getting into their 20s. And that's one of their desires, is to finally have someone to try this stuff out on.
So today I'm super pleased to be joined by Tim Challies. Many of you will probably know him from his blog, challies.com. He is also an author and speaker and book reviewer and father of 2 kids, husband of 1 wife. He has written this fantastic book, which it is Sexual Detox, a guide for guys who are sick of porn, one of my favorite resources to recommend to men of all ages. And he has been speaking all over the world for the past over a dozen years, or at least writing on all sorts of topics. And today I wanted to talk to Tim because you cover everything on your blog. You've been blogging every day for 13, 14 years.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't even know. Long time.
Anyone who faithfully reads your blog also knows that you are constantly linking to other types of resources. You post 5 to 6 great links for videos and articles from around the internet every day. And so you cover a wide variety of topics, but in particular, maybe I'm biased, but it seems to me like you've devoted quite a bit of time and energy to speaking about pornography.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to have a conversation about why pornography, of all the issues in the world that you could kind of focus some extra time on, why is it pornography that you felt the need to kind of really emphasize fighting it, both in our homes and kind of in our lives, society, all aspects of it. You've really, really put out a lot of what I think are excellent articles on the subject. So why fight pornography in particular?
I think I got onto that stream just through my local church. I was talking to some young men there, and I guess outside as well. This was years ago now, and just starting to talk to them about their lives and what was going on and how they're doing, and started to realize that these guys were really looking at a lot of porn. But what I found even more concerning was that as they thought about the future, as they thought about marriage, I could see that really one of the reasons they wanted to get married was so they could start to act out porn. And so this had been their childhood, this has been their teenage years, now they're getting into their 20s. And that's one of their desires, is to finally have someone to try this stuff out on. And so in some ways, here are good Christian boys, I'm not going to have sex until marriage. And yet here are these boys who had been immersed in this stuff and were now just looking for an object for it. And that really concerned me. So I wanted to address the boys, I wanted to protect the girls. So I think that's where I started writing some blog posts on it that turned into a series called Sexual Detox that got turned into a book called Sexual Detox.
And do you ever face people questioning why we need to spend time writing about pornography? We've gotten this at Strength to Fight when we speak out about these issues, and people kind of say, why don't you just, preach Jesus all the time? Why not just focus on the gospel? Isn't that what people need? Why put in all this effort into specifically talking about an issue like pornography?
I think I used to get that more. So when I first started talking about it, people just didn't know. People just weren't aware. Like young men especially understood there's lots of porn out there. Their parents hadn't caught on yet. And, the older generation hadn't caught on yet to just how big an impact it was having. In more recent years, I think we're now on the other side where people are just feeling tired. Like, haven't we already said enough? Do we need to keep talking about it? So initially, do we need to talk about this at all? Now, do we need to keep talking about this? I think, yes, we absolutely needed to have the conversation. And yes, we continue to need to have the conversation. I'm seeing some good stuff coming. I'm seeing some glimmers of hope. I'm seeing that organizations like your own and lots of writers and lots of preachers are covering this topic now. And so the new generation of parents is helping their kids in the way the last generation of parents did not, just because they were ignorant. So I'm hopeful, but we still have a ton of work to do.
You've been kind of around when you started really writing about all this stuff was around the start of the smartphone. Um,
Hmm.
have you seen a pretty big shift in the conversations you're having with people and with parents as the technology has changed so fast?
Yeah, I started writing about it in the era when the main protection was install this software on the family computer, put the family computer in a public place within the house, and just assume you've got only one, maybe two computers in the house. Everybody's sitting down, sharing it for homework, all that kind of stuff. It sounds very quaint now. But today, of course, everybody has their own computer and their own device. And so, as you well know, porn has gone mobile. That's how people are accessing it now. More than half, well, more than half of porn is now consumed on very small rectangles rather than much bigger ones. So absolutely, the conversation has changed. You now need to have a much more holistic approach, whereas you can't just account for that one computer in your home. You need to account for all those computers in your home. You need to account for what your kids are doing outside of the home, and on and on. So it's become far more complicated in a lot of ways.
And yourself, like you have two kids, and they would have been, I believe, under 10.
Three kids.
Three kids.
Yep.
I just totally missed one.
No problem.
So I believe they would have been under 10, right, when you first started writing about this stuff, or around then. And so
The oldest is 18 now.
yes, you've gotten to kind of go through this entire parenting teens journey at the same time as the rise of the smartphone. And I mean, I remember getting my first flip phone. I was in college. And I remember actually laughing when Apple announced they're going to make a phone, because we thought, like, Apple doesn't make phones.
Right.
What is this? And now, I mean, that's trying to explain to a 17-year-old what the internet used to be like, what dial-up used to be like. It's such a different world, and you've had the joy of parenting these last 10 years of the rise of smartphone. What have you learned as a parent, not just from the kind of outside looking at the issue and how it's affecting people, but very practically? Like, you've written some great stuff on how to deal with it from a bigger picture in your home. But what has it been like as a parent? You know, you write your article and all these people say, this is great. And then you have to deal with this very practically within your own home, because you have your own kids. And what's that like?
Yeah, it's been okay. I think I was, again, sort of on the leading edge of parents who were aware of this issue and really committed to, we will not allow our kids to blunder into this. We will teach and train our kids. We will see preventing pornography as part of our discipleship of our children. So we faced it differently than your parents or my parents, the parents of the last generation or two, who just didn't know. They just weren't aware that this was an issue. They're like, hey, let's give our kids computers and internet, and you can go have fun and don't play too many games now. And they didn't get it. We get it. And so we've raised our kids differently. We've raised them with an awareness of this thing. And to be honest, I haven't found it that challenging. I think just teaching our kids from the get-go, there's bad stuff out there, keeping an eye on them, and then just helping them understand what to pursue online, what to avoid, what some of the pitfalls are. That awareness as a parent, I think, is really the key to it all, just committing to the fight on behalf of your kids.
One question that I get a lot, and I try to give some good advice, but I haven't walked through this yet because all my kids are still little, is one of the more difficult things is, so it's great, you prepare your kid for this world and you teach them all the right things and the true things and the good things, but then they're out there, they're going to school, they have friends, and their friends' parents aren't raising them this way. And how do you try to prepare, especially your teenage kids, to deal with that, to deal with the fact that, their friends don't see the world the same way, their friends' homes aren't run the same way. It's just, it's pretty different. And that's something that I just haven't had the experience of going through at all.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things is you never know what your kids, you love your kids, you trust your kids to some degree, but there will be things that come out about your kids later on that they'll tell you when they're a little bit older, and just kind of, hey, Dad, did you ever know that kind of stuff, right? I mean, did the same with my parents. So I don't know that I've got the best gauge on what my kids have actually seen and experienced. I talk to them, I hear from them, I don't think they're liars, etc. So I just want to be careful that, I think things have gone well. I don't think my kids have really been exposed to a whole lot through their friends. And, they go to public schools, they have friends in the neighborhood, they're not completely isolated away from other kids. They've got lots of experience. The Christian lots of ways to experience Christian and non-Christian kids. But I think just in general, they're not that interested in seeing that stuff. They don't have a deep desire for it. And I hope that's because of the way we've taught and trained them. And so I'm not aware of my kids experiencing those things outside the house. Now, for all that, we have a no sleepovers rule in our family. So our kids have never done sleepovers at other people's homes, which I know can be an area of temptation or an area where this stuff can happen. But no, I think our kids have just been able to generally avoid it and not show a lot of interest in it. That's my understanding as a parent. And I know, again, my kids could be pulling the wool over my eyes.
I didn't have this one written down in my notes, but I have to ask because I don't think of any article we ever link to, we never get more positive feedback and more negative feedback than any of your articles on sleepovers.
Yes.
So could you just talk about that for a second, that decision to have that just the rule of we're just not going to do this at all. And kind of since raising your kids like that, how have your thoughts evolved as the conversation continues?
So we decided before our kids were able to do sleepovers, we would not allow them to do sleepovers. We made that decision between Eileen and myself and decided that if we take it off the table altogether, we're never faced with exception. So we never have to explain to this family, oh, we let our daughter go to their house, we're not letting her go to your house. Just take those off the table altogether. I mean, honestly, if you stop to think about it, sleepovers are not a necessary part of growing up. They're not a make or break for a childhood, etc. Yes, they're fun, but you know what? There's lots of other things in life that are fun. And so we just took those off the table. I decided to write about it, and that article has been read, I'd say, exponentially more than any other one of my articles. And I'd say the majority of people have been very positive, but the more vocal people have been very negative, as tends to happen. But yeah, we just took that off the table altogether. And if we had to do it all again, we would absolutely do the same thing. We've had no regrets. Our kids have been angry at us occasionally about it when they were young, and there's been some sorrow on their part. But no, it's been fine. We would definitely do it again, and believe that for us, for our family, in our situation, knowing ourselves, knowing our kids, knowing our context, it was the right thing. Other parents are totally free to make the other decision, and God bless them. That's absolutely fine. I'm not standing on what the Bible says we must do. I'm applying wisdom to my family.
One of the things that people say to us is they kind of say, well, I'm afraid to have this conversation. I think it'll ruin my relationship with my child. And so I think that if you're that afraid, then you might have some other issues in your relationship with your child if you're afraid that one conversation will destroy it. But how were you able to navigate specifically those conversations when your kids come back and they say, like, but why? Right? Like, how are you able to sit down and remind them of, these are the reasons? Like, what? I think parents are afraid that their kids aren't going to understand that they're doing it out of love. So how were you able to navigate those conversations?
I don't think it's that hard. You got to lead your kids, right? You're the parent. You have to lead your kids. You have to teach and train them. You have authority that they do not. So you don't want to abuse that authority. You don't want to run over your kids, but you just teach your kids that I'm doing things out of love for you. And out of that love for you, I'm denying you what you think is a great privilege, but I think is an unnecessary risk. So parents are afraid to lead their kids. It will somehow disrupt their children's love for them. Really, the opposite is true. Children want to be led. We all want to be led. We want our politicians to lead us. We want our pastors to lead us. We want our parents to lead us, and well and good. So lead your kids. Be the parent. You don't owe them sleepovers. There's nothing in the Bible or nothing in the law of the land that says they need to have them. It's just one discretionary thing you can extend to them or hold back from them. And it really won't make or break their lives or their childhood. So lead your kids. I run into this. I did a seminar a little while ago at a public school in town here. And parents were talking about, how do I get my child to watch less Netflix? Or won't my child hate me if I start to put some blocks on their phone? I was like, lead your kids. I mean, that's our whole task really, is taking them from folly to wisdom. And you're going to have to make some tough decisions and do some things along the way that they're going to be upset about. So
I did want to ask you about, like, anybody who follows you would know that you are anything but a Luddite. You like to discuss new technology and where it's taking us. And yet a lot of the time we both, I think as Christians, as parents even more so, we can be pretty afraid of technology and how it's changing. How do you try to have a healthy relationship with technology and kind of strike that balance? We don't want to be afraid of it, and we also don't just want to go with the flow all the time.
Yeah. I think part of our responsibility as Christians is to take advantage of new technologies and to use them well for the glory of God. We exist in this world to do good to others, and in that way bring glory to God. And our tools, software, hardware tools, technological tools, give us great means to do that. So we can't just shut these things away and let the world take advantage of them. We're thankful that Luther and the Reformers took hold of the printing press and really used it well. We're thankful that people got the radio and used it well to broadcast the gospel. We're glad that the Bible app exists and Logos and all these great tools. So as Christians, we ought to be closely investigating new technologies and seeing how we can use them. And I hope I do that. On the other hand, we need to acknowledge that every technology comes with both opportunity, which we see clearly, and risk, which we tend not to see very clearly. And so as Christians, I hope we're measuring carefully. We're just looking carefully to see how can we use this technology, integrate this technology into our lives in a way that's going to see the benefits but mitigate the risks. So I think in my family, that means maybe not being so quick to adopt new technologies, or not being the first in the classroom to have a cell phone and those sorts of things. And yet also understanding that part of our teaching and training of our kids is teaching them to use these tools and helping them use them well.
Awesome. And what is your experience been like as you've shared with your readers? You've been going through some health issues with your wrists that prevent you from typing or using essentially technology just as you normally would. Have you learned anything? Not in terms of like, have you learned your lesson, but like, do you think you've learned anything about the way we use technology, both good and bad, from kind of being unable to just do whatever you want, like you normally would?
Yeah, I think you see your dependence on it, right? That for me, at least, I spend a lot of time in front of a computer and using various screens and typing. Typing is my preferred form of communication. It's what I do. I love to do. So having those things held back or pulled away for a time, I think has shown how deeply dependent on them I am. And not that that's a bad thing. It's what I do. I'm a writer, so I shouldn't apologize for using the tool. But I think just an awareness thing. Like these tools are very, very important to me and can easily be pulled away. So I think it's been helpful. It's been clarifying in some ways, and maybe a little alarming as well. Just understanding that dependency. If that's taken away, I don't know what I've got left.
So what do you say to people who I think are worried about their relationship with technology? Because I think sometimes we can brush this stuff as just pornography, and then like I've called up friends who I see on their accountability report that they're watching 8 hours of Netflix, and I call them up and be like, hey, what's going on, man? And they're like, well, it's not porn. Why are you bothering me? And I'm like, well, you're clearly not okay. If you were at the movie theater all day, I'd be worried about you. So how do we, without overreacting, how do we try to really strike that balance in our lives?
Yeah, I think self-control tends to stand or fall in clumps, not one thing at a time. So if you're watching 8 hours of Netflix a day, I'd say you're probably very close to overeating. You're probably very close to watching pornography. There's certain things you should watch for in your life and say, when I'm letting go of self-control in that area, chances are I'm going to soon be letting go of self-control in another area. So I think we need to be pretty careful of that. And I've forgotten the rest of your question.
No, that pretty much covered it.
Okay.
So one last question I have to ask you, because you are an author, and maybe even more than that, you are a reader. So if we're telling people to not watch pornography and maybe not watch 8 hours of Netflix, I always want to give people something else to do. So what are some great books, fiction, nonfiction, that you would encourage people if they're looking for a good way to spend their time? What would you encourage people to pick up?
So let me just go back a little bit and just address this idea that the universe owes us 8 hours of entertainment a day or 4 hours of entertainment a day. This is a very modern notion that entertainment is really a big part of our lives. We expect it. We take it today as our due, as our right. Historically, people haven't had that. So we have this luxury we enjoy today, and we can get a real sense of entitlement. And I hate that question. What will I do if I don't watch Netflix? Like, what is your problem? There is so much of this world to enjoy. There's so much you can do, so much you should do. You don't need Netflix. So if you start to see your entertainment as a benefit, as a bonus, as something you enjoy, but enjoy sparingly, it's so much more delightful than if it becomes this idolatrous thing you're giving yourself over to for hours and hours a day. It just becomes then gluttony. You're glutting yourself on Netflix every day or on entertainment every day. So if you scale back your entertainment and let it be the cherry on top, let it be a reward for a job well done, I think it takes on a much better role in our lives. Similar to food, don't gorge yourself on food. You'll enjoy food more if you eat less of it. You can just savor it and enjoy it. So with entertainment, I think that's helpful. In terms of reading, I think people should be reading more history, and especially at a time like this. It seems like the world around us is just changing so radically. It's true politically, it's true socioeconomically, it's true racially, it's true like things we thought it's true sexually, right? I mean, 10 years ago, nobody would have believed that what's considered normal and right and righteous today could actually have happened, right? Things are happening at this remarkable pace. So I think we have to go back and be reading history, the history of our nations, history of Christianity, history of the world, and just setting all of this in a context. So there you go. Pick up some good history and read about the world as it was and start to learn some lessons for the world as it is today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this and for taking the time. And you can check out all of Tim's writing, his various books, and especially Sexual Detox, a guide for guys who are sick of porn, at challies.com.
You faded out for literally that entire little speech you gave there, so I had no idea what you said, but I'll just smile and nod my head and say, that's a good word, brother. Good word.